What's up, y'all? I wanted to share some thoughts about special education in international schools. I originally brought this topic up in the International Educator and then subsequently remixed it and put it in a blog post linked below. And the other day I woke up and you have those clear thoughts in those waking stages. And I thought, you should make a video about this. So here we are. I've been traveling around the world and teaching the last 11 years. And while I'm trying to make this stint I'm at now in Amsterdam a little bit longer than some of the previous ones, I've been around a lot and I've seen a lot of different international schools and how they do things. I started in the DR in the Dominican Republic, and I was there for 3 years and loved it. The school was great, had a lot of fun. And then from there, I tried out a 1-year gig in Kuwait. They had a 1-year contract. I arrived, immediately started looking for a new job, but it was a good experience. It kind of opened my eyes to different parts of the world that I hadn't been used to before. And after that, I went to Ethiopia and started to get some of that IB experience and became the head of department. Then I went to Mexico, went to Bali after that. And then I feel like I'm missing one. I don't know. Maybe that's it. And then I went to Amsterdam. I think that's all. I think I've lived in about 7 countries total. I've seen a lot of different international schools and a lot of ways to support diverse learners. And I wanted to share some critiques and some hopes for the future. For those of you that are new to international schools or just wondering exactly what I'm talking about, here's a working definition of what an international school is. International schools are basically schools that are set up in a country to serve a population in a certain language and/or educational curriculum. All of these schools I've worked at have been mainly in English. They've all been accredited by British or US agencies that accredit schools in Britain and the US, or an IB school accredited by the International Baccalaureate. They have had Common Core or AP, the advanced placement, or IGCSEs, the British program. Well, I guess the I is international, but kind of a British style, etc., as the main curriculum. And I gotta say, all of them, except for Kuwait, had good homemade cafeteria food that, despite being delicious, the students still complained about. An example is growing up in California, I lived close to a French immersion school. I didn't know it at the time. We just called it the French school. Like, go over that bridge, take a right past the French school, and you'll find that trail through the Baylands. Yeah, go that way. But it was basically an international school, as I've come to know them, as I've taught my way around the world. After meeting people as an adult that went to some of these schools, I think they hired native French speakers, mainly to work there, just, hiring foreign folks. And most classes were in French. Embassy kids would go there, business people, whatnot, would send their kids there, but also locals from my community who wanted to send their kids to get a good education and be bilingual would send their kids there. And funny enough, from doing the Google Maps search, it's now an international school. If you're curious about how to get into international education, I put some links to some of the big recruiting agencies down in the description below. Before I was aware of resources like the International Educator or TIE or ISS, I went to using an online directory of international schools that I just found on a Google search. I went to each school website where I thought I might want to live, found an admin's email, and started hustling for a job, not even knowing that they likely had a current opening section on the website. I just looked for an admin email and sent an email. And sitting in a coffee shop in Long Beach, California, one day, I received a response from a headmaster that I will never forget. The person told me that her school was a college prep school, and either her students didn't have challenges or they dealt with them outside of school. That blew my mind. I was shocked because I was coming from a background where we support students in the least restrictive environment, and which means we aim for the fullest inclusion possible, and we do what it takes to keep them there through different co-teaching models, through all the accommodations, through all that stuff to make sure the students succeed. But as I continue to look at schools and learn more about international education, I came to realize that even though it was 2011, the international schools were just seemingly beginning to get into the journey of inclusion. And the subsequent need for differentiation of curriculum was more at the burgeoning stages or the beginning stages, and alternate graduation paths were not locked down in you know what I'm saying. Like there's just a lot of room for improvement. On a side note, let me warn you, don't get fancy with your cold call emails to a bunch of principals. I had a pretty troubling experience, kind of the equivalent to like a Zoom experience when, Zoom started becoming a thing. Basically, one day I thought I was being fancy with this way. I was forwarding the previous email to a new director or a new admin. And I was like, okay, I'm saving time, I'm cutting out steps. And then after I sent like 20 or 30 emails, I got maybe it was a couple days later or whatever, I got a response from one of the people, and I noticed that they had all the 20 or 30 previous emails that I had sent, and I just had changed the name of the person and the school, and that was so embarrassing. So either go with a recruitment agency or step up your email game, because that was over 10 years ago, and I'm still a bit embarrassed about that. At any rate, so it was 2011. I donned a three-piece suit, went to a job fair in San Francisco, and got my first international school learning support position in the Dominican Republic. The school's secondary program was developing their service delivery model, and I was able to jump in and help move things forward. Same thing at my next school and the school after that. Yes, I was globetrotting at that point. And yeah, at that school, my third international school, basically the learning support stopped when they got to the IB diploma program. And so as the head of department and as a learning support teacher in the high school, I strove to bring more differentiation, inclusion, co-planning, and stuff like that to the DP program. So coming into that program, it reminded me of that comment I heard a few years ago from a principal that said, hey, it's a college prep program, either they're going to make it or not. And I had that sentiment from people. They would say, hey, if they chose to be full IB, that means that they're able to do it. And, teachers would say, oh, I don't want to water down the curriculum. Oh, I don't want them to fail the test. I don't want them, X, Y, and Z. And yeah, it was just hard for me because these students a lot of them had been at our school for years, some of them since like kindergarten, a couple of them, like the local cats, and they'd had learning support all the way up through grade 10. And then they joined the IB, the most rigorous program I've ever seen, the DP, the diploma program. And then boom, maybe they get like extra time or on a test or something like that. So we had to make some inroads. I get to this IB school and immediately had students that were technically on my caseload because they had, like College Board extra time and IB extra time, but they were struggling in the DP, in writing, in the foreign language, in math. Some of them were in, a math class that was too hard, but they weren't getting support. Several of the students were way behind in their extended essay and IAs and CAS and like all that stuff. And the history of learning support stopped at 10th grade, basically. So it led people to focus on 10th, 9th, middle school, and all that. So I had to work my way into the IB system. I got admin support, and I was able to slowly kind of ingratiate myself into the program and work with the teachers. So one aspect of the IB that was a little bit hard for me to get into or work my way into was that just IB teachers seem to not be used to differentiating and co-planning and co-teaching like non-IB teachers. I think they felt more kind of like that sage on the stage. They got their curriculum, they're prepping their kids. And, I'm just pointing it out. I'm not hating. All the teachers that I worked with were strong teachers. We had good IB results. So it's like, but we had good IB results for the kids that stayed. What about the kids that were like on the border or a little bit lower that got kicked out of the IB program, essentially. So that was kind of one of the things. And then another thing I had to contend with is that a lot of teachers would just tell me that they felt that differentiating the curriculum or giving accommodations was kind of a crutch for the students. And so they didn't want them to do it because they didn't think they'd pass the world exams or wouldn't do well if they had all these crutches. But over time, with the many teachers who gave up their planning time to talk about, their concerns, to talk about upcoming assessments, projects, and grade bands and all that stuff, we were able to understand that we could do a million different adjustments and accommodations and do all this stuff along the way. And when it came to like the final high stakes exams, the students would have built the skills and they would have learned the content in order to pass the test, or to do well, to show their learning in the best way possible. So one example I use a lot is that I had a student on my caseload that was struggling in physics. And to be honest, I can't remember all the details, if it was physics, HL or SL, but I was working with the teacher who was also my neighbor, and we would collaborate sometimes on his balcony, but that's the international teaching right there. But I worked with him, the teacher, and the tutor and the student, and kind of like not like on the day-to-day, but as a case manager, facilitating, making sure the tutor was on point, because the tutor was a little bit off. Sometimes the tutor was doing his own thing and wasn't being 100% helpful. But at any rate, one of the big things we decided was that we were going to cut a whole topic out of the students' program. We said, hey, for this month that we're doing, the class is doing this, they're learning this new content, you're not going to learn that. And you are going to work with the tutor, and Beckett's going to kind of plan things out, and you are going to redo the previous unit that you failed. And then the whole plan was we looked at his whole IB situation and said, hey, he needs to at least get a 4 in physics. And right now he's not. He's looking to get like a 3. And so we need him to get a 4, and that balances out with all the other classes. So if we cut this topic, we review the other topic, the chances are, instead of getting, failing one topic, moving on, and then having trouble with another topic, he's going to do really good in that topic. And that was like maybe even worth a little bit more in the scheme of all the marks and whatnot. And so, yeah, we did that. And to me, it wasn't necessarily a modification, because who knows? I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But we were still focusing on the end test. He's going to take the same test as everybody, the IB test. And the student ended up passing and got his IB diploma. I think he actually went on to the Netherlands, where I'm at right now. Who knows? Maybe he's walking these streets right now, getting a little morning jog. But so those are the type of things we brought into the program. And it was great to see teachers open to different ideas, admin supporting, and all that. Just in the short amount of time that I've been teaching abroad, I've seen a lot of movement towards inclusion and just supporting students wherever they have needs. To be fair, a lot of teachers don't like it. A lot of times they say that the school is bringing in kids that, they wouldn't have previously because the school needs money or something like that. And I don't know, that might be part of it. But I think the provision of learning support is, like the IB, for example, I keep talking about the IB, they have their access and inclusion policy, and they have their philosophies, and schools are starting to have their inclusion policies. And like, that's not going away. The days of just teaching down the middle of the road, sink or swim, I think those days are over forever, which is amazing, because I came in at a time in my life in the 90s where it wasn't as much sink or swim, but even I was affected by it. And then people I knew that were a little bit older than me were like 100% affected by it. If you had dyslexia or something back in like the 70s and 80s and before, that was some serious sink or swim from what I hear. So things are changing. We're making some progress, and I'm happy to be part of that evolution or revolution. So this goes back to the idea of supporting at all levels. Just because a student is in a college prep school or has gotten accepted into the full IB program, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be co-planning between the chemistry HL teacher and learning support, or maybe pushing support in the AP Euro class, or collaboration with the TOK teacher to help with strategies for the kid that gets anxiety during the Socratic seminars. Like, all those things are on the table, in my opinion. And I think that as time goes, we're going to keep seeing all of that built into the unit plans and just the expectations and the ethoses of schools. RTI and MTSS are steadfastly becoming part of how we approach student differences in our international schools. We are getting away from those hallway conversations or those meetings where we're telling stories about students, and we're moving towards building tiered systems of support, building toolboxes for schools and teachers and everybody to use. And with increased rates of special needs, such as ADHD and autism, we need to keep ensuring that we incorporate inclusion best practices and have high expectations for not only the students, but for the learning support teachers and general education teachers who work with them. When I first started my international learning support journey in 2011, I found that students either were counseled out of the school if they got on academic probation or behavior probation, they just couldn't keep up, or they weren't allowed in the school in the first place. Or if they were lucky enough to have learning support services, they often would still end up on academic probation or behavior probation, or sometimes they'd reach a milestone like middle school or high school and would be counseled out, kind of like, hey, maybe the MC school down the road might be a little bit better. But things are starting to change. Now I'm working at schools where there's an expectation that we're going to do whatever we can to not only work with students with learning challenges, but also to like not modify. It's like we want the full program, least restrictive environment, full IB for everybody that can do it, full diploma for everybody that can do it, and we're going to do everything that we can. Some of the schools I worked at have said we're not going to recommend tutors because it's our job to do what we do. Other schools say that they don't want to split up families, so we're going to do everything we can to keep families together. You might have two neurotypical children and then a third with severe dyslexia. And we're saying we want to keep them together oftentimes. So I think that's a great practice. At the school I worked at in Ethiopia, we were steadily building a program to help students, with like fetal alcohol syndrome or Down syndrome and stuff like that. And what I heard just being HOD there is that a lot of the families, like when we talked to the State Department, like government families, they would choose the US Embassy in Addis Ababa. It sounded weird coming out. They would purposely choose that because either maybe they got rejected from other posts or they just knew that their kids would be supported in Addis. And same thing here, like in Ash in the Netherlands. I think they have a lot of support. People, would come here for that. And I think, I don't know, I just feel like schools like that will become the norm as time goes. As inclusion keeps going, as people understand, just that we need to do everything we can, I feel that will be more normal than an anomaly or the outliers. And things are changing globally. We got organizations like Senya, which I'm a part of the Senya Netherlands chapter. We've got Next Frontier Inclusion really helping push best practice. We've got our EAL organizations helping to get all of that going and just help build best practice on the day-to-day. I think just school by school, conference by conference, we're really building on these inclusive practices. And as teachers and schools get more familiar with best practices of differentiating instruction and having differentiated graduation paths and basically just improving the service delivery model, we will continue to see more families kept together, more happy children and happy families, and basically just see students do way more better than they used to do during the whole sink or swim, counseled out, this is a college prep school vibe. Not every student will be successful in the full IB program. Not every student will be able to handle the rigor of an AP class. But it's our job to make sure that we give students the opportunity to be successful in the setting that it has the most appropriate challenge for them. It would be great to hear your thoughts and experiences about learning support in international schools in the comments below, especially if you've been around longer than 2011. It'd be great to hear, like, if you see that same trajectory that I'm talking about, or I mean, maybe I'm seeing things differently. I don't know. It'd be great to see what people are talking about. And also, it'd be great to hear if you have hope, like I do, that things are going to keep evolving and we're going to keep pushing towards inclusion. And if you don't have that hope, it'd be great to hear, and we can kind of go back and forth down in the comment section. All right, peace.